Today is Wednesday, October 30th, 2013, and Joe Turner, Alan Banks, and myself, Judy Meyer, are talking to Kevin Heidbreder. Is that how you pronounce
correct.
your name?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you spell that for us?
I can. Well, I think I can. Heidbreder. It's very German last name. My father's very German. My mother's very Italian.
I see.
Henry and Patricia.
All righty. Kevin, can you tell us where and when you were born?
No. No idea. Yes, I was born in 1968, downtown St. Louis. And I've lived in St. Louis my whole life, Bridgeton primarily my entire life. I'm 44, and we moved here when I was an infant.
Well, when you say you moved here, where did your parents live before this?
I think they lived, if my history is correct, they lived with my grandparents for several months while houses were being built. My parents actually, the home that we're in now is my grandparents' home.
And we are, what street are we on?
We're on Bain Court.
And this was your grandparents' home?
My grandparents' home. And my parents lived a block over on Lockport. Both my grandparents and my parents had their homes built. And my parents were here a couple of years prior in just a little bit older section of the neighborhood.
Is this called St. James Estates we're in right now?
Yeah, well, we're in St. James Estates. And then there's another name on the other side of the neighborhood. So you got St. James Estates, and then, oh goodness gracious.
That's all right. If you don't recall, it might come back to you.
We're at St. James Estates. That's where they used to have the statue when you pulled in.
What a statue! Oh, on the
by the police station.
What?
Oh, no, it was on Magella.
Oh.
Sat in the middle of the road.
I vaguely remember. I vaguely remember that, but what was the statue of?
I would have guessed at St. James. I'm
okay.
assuming this. And this being the day before Halloween, which is interesting, this is the night that we would have snuck out and put pails on his head, buckets on his head, toilet paper all around him. He got that every year.
But he's not there anymore.
No, there was in the middle of the road, as you get to right there in front of the police station in Magella, there's a widening in the road. The road just doesn't go straight, and that's why there used to be this big round, well actually it was oval shaped. It looked like a pond, but there was never water in it. Mm-hmm. It was made out of red brick, and the statue stood right in the middle. So when you pulled in, you went, there was a little sign right in front of the police station, I think it said St. James Estates, and then the statue was there for years.
And we're talking on Natural Bridge.
Yeah, the entrance to the neighborhood from Natural Bridge, yeah.
Right now, presently, in 2013, the police station is actually down the street, right?
Yes, down the street, but the building is still there. The original building is still there.
Well, you lived basically here then your whole life?
My whole entire life. I grew up here, so I've been here as a kid. Recently, my parents moved out. My mom passed away almost 3 years now, and Dad moved out of the neighborhood about a year ago.
Oh.
But we've got, my parents and grandparents were big movie takers, so predecessor to the video or camcorder. So we found boxes full of 8mm films, and interestingly, I don't know if there's something we can, if we ever get a transfer to video, I'd love to give you guys some of this. There's plenty of footage of the whole neighborhood being built because my parents actually filmed the construction of their home in steps and stages, so there's wonderful views of the whole neighborhood kind of being developed and coming together. So we actually have documented history going back to, I guess that would have been like 1967 when they put the contract on the home. And my grandparents moved in here in 1970.
Well, do you remember the builder?
Yeah, Zyken.
Zyken
built all of the homes on this side of the, Frank Zyken, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, he built all of the homes on this side of the neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a younger brother named Mike. He's 8 years younger.
8 years younger.
And he still lives in the area, but not in Bridgeton.
Okay. Now tell us where you went to school.
Pattonville. Pattonville.
In grade school?
Pattonville Elementary, which is now a credit union up on Fifi.
Oh, so the name was Pattonville.
It was Pattonville Elementary, was the grade school.
And it's where that credit union now is.
Yeah, and for a few short years, it was actually the Bridgeton Community Center.
Right.
While they were building the current community center, which is also now going to be torn down for another community center. So,
A lot of changes are going on, and this way it's very important for us to try to pinpoint these buildings
Sure.
and places, because what was there 20 years ago sometimes is something entirely different. So tell us about going to, and your brother, did he go to the Pattonville
He
school?
went to Pattonville. Well, and actually, I changed schools. They closed Pattonville Elementary on Fifi when I was after my 3rd grade year. They closed the building and moved us all to Carrollton. So I think some kids went to Carrollton Oaks, some kids went to Carrollton, and so I was 4th through 6th at Carrollton. And then there were really weird changes there, because I was also the last group of kids that 6th grade was in the elementary. So my first year in junior high, and this only happened, I went to 7th grade and 8th grade, so there was a weird transition. When I went there, I'm trying to recall this properly, for a period of years, the freshmen in high school were actually at the middle school. We were at Holman. So there was a number of years that 7th, 8th, and 9th grade was at Holman. I was actually in a transition period, so I went there when it was just 7th and 8th grade. So my 7th grade year was at Holman, my 8th grade year was at Holman, and then I went on to be a freshman in high school, and at that point they moved the 6th grade from the elementary level to the middle school. So I guess the Pattonville schools went kindergarten through 5, and then it was 6, 7, 8, and then high school. But it was just a couple of year period where we were the 7th graders and the 8th graders. Those were the only 2 classes in the middle school. And it was the same for, I think it was the same for Pattonville Heights, which is the other Pattonville middle school over on Fifi, Dorset.
And when you were growing up here, what type of community events did they have? The parade while you were growing up?
Yeah,
the
it was.
4th
I
of
marched
July parade.
in that 4th of July parade a number of times when I was in
Really?
the high school marching band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was in the Pattonville marching band for a number of years, so we did that. And that's that, and the fireworks display at BMAC are huge things that have gone on all the years that I've been here. The parade didn't always happen. That kind of came. I remember the parade from my high school years, and not really prior to that. The fireworks display at BMAC was there since I was a kid.
Kevin, I saw you the other day, and we just happened to talk about something that happened in Bridgeton that none of our other people have talked about, and that was an event where a plane actually came down and crashed in Bridgeton. I was wondering if you'd tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's amazing to have an airplane crash in your neighborhood. It's sad because, if I recall correctly, I think the pilots died. It was a cargo plane. Again, this is going back, I was 12 or 13. Just a block from here, literally. And there's still a strip of grass between Benedetta and Highway 70, and that's where the plane actually landed.
Not on Highway 70.
No, and not into the houses that are literally 20 feet away.
That's remarkable.
It is very, and they credited the pilots that didn't live with making that choice. And again, recalling the details off the top of my head, I think somebody put the wrong fuel in, and when it got up to enough where it had that fuel going into the system, the engine started to die, and the plane dropped low enough, I believe, that one of the wings hit the telephone pole at the top of, and I'm pointing the top of Avery, which would be this direction. Knocked the wing off in someone's front yard, and the planes just missed the homes.
Wow.
And it landed in that just grassy area between the highway and the rest of the neighborhood.
What do you remember? Was it a weekday or a weekend?
You know,
or?
I don't recall. I remember, we talked before the interview that I'm a lifelong guitar player and musician, and I was actually in my bedroom practicing, which and this happened frequently. Fuses would blow in the house, and the electricity went off, and all I remember was my mother yelling. And I got up and I went to check the fuse box, because that's what I would always do when I blew a fuse, and nothing was tripped, and then the power came back on, and it was maybe 15 or 20 minutes later, and my mom starts pounding on the bedroom door, and what do I do now? And she said, "You got to see this." And okay, my dad did something, my brother did something, somebody did something that I got to go see. So she drags me out, and again, this is a block from where we're at now. She drags me out the front door and down the street, and you take a look, and literally there are 25, 30 police cars, ambulances, and there are just sirens going. And you gotta remember, this is way before cell phones and internet, so you weren't as connected. And we did, even from being out at the end of the street, you couldn't tell exactly what was going on. And we walked a little farther down, and you could see that there was an airplane, a very large cargo plane, just sitting there. It was interesting to see, sad to see, and it actually, family lives on the corner of the Grelmers. They still live there. They were lifelong friends of mine. Went to still talk to them. They were kind of the first people having like at the end of their driveway, basically.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, so they got to, they went out and helped as much as they could. And the only other odd thing I think that was really weird, I think there were two pilots. Again, I'm going way back here to recall this, but for some reason they believed that there were three. And so there was a good number of hours spent looking for a third person that really wasn't there, and that was kind of an odd
situation.
Well, yeah, you walk around and people are just kind of looking, and you know what's going on, what they're looking for, and then I think they kind of backtracked a little bit and realized it was just two pilots, or a pilot and a co-pilot.
I see.
Yeah, real strange experience.
It's strange and not one of our happy moments here in Bridgeton.
But certainly not something that you see happen everywhere either.
How far would you say we are from the airport proper right here? How far would you say you are?
About a mile.
Speaking of close, you also were telling me about when you were young boy, that you spent time going up watching Northwest Plaza being built and started. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually didn't see Northwest Plaza being built. That was a little before my time. It was the community center that I got to see built, but I spent a lot of childhood time at Northwest Plaza, which again, as we're speaking, is being torn down. And I remember an entire childhood there when it was an outdoor mall.
Well, tell us a little bit about that for the folks that never have experienced what Northwest Plaza was, especially when it was first built. What do you remember it to be?
Well, I'm assuming, I guess it got its name where, the north and west kind of meet. To go with the obvious, I guess. And I remember even my dad telling me that at the time it was the largest outdoor shopping mall in the country. And again, this little history from Dad. We've driven up there a couple of times while they're tearing it down. I kind of talked about some of this actually. The Sears building, I think he said, was the first one to be built, and then everything else kind of came together. But for anybody who never went there, it was just like a modern day shopping mall, but everything was outside. So stores were connected, but you didn't have a door that went from one store to another store. You actually went outside. There were awnings to walk under, so if the weather was bad, you didn't get soaking wet, with a few exceptions. I mean, you had to walk some stretches without, if you wanted to go from where Sears was to JCPenney, you were going out in the rain or the snow or whatever happened to be waiting for you. But it was always wonderful to shop there in the wintertime. They would light the place up for the holidays and in a very nice manner. And it was neat to shop there when it actually snowed, and it used to snow here a lot more than it does now for some reason. And I can remember many holiday seasons being at Northwest Plaza Christmas shopping. They would pipe music through the whole outside. They always did. So they'd have holiday music playing. The place is lit up with all sorts of holiday lighting and snow, and it was just a really neat experience that I think a lot of people, it's gone.
And what about in the summer? Do you remember what happened there during the summer?
Well, they would do things. It was a huge parking lot, so there was always something going on. I think one time they even did a circus in the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
So there'd be carnival, circuses. People would use the big space for things, events, and there was always something going on.
I think they had the balloon glow there one time.
I think they launched hot air balloons from there several times that I can remember. There was a movie theater there back when it was I remember it was just a one-screen movie theater, so it wasn't even like 12, 3 screens. When they converted it to they did convert that movie theater. The building's still there. I think it's a furniture store right now. It sits right. It's the outset of buildings. It sits right there on Lindbergh.
Right. Yes.
That used to be it was a General Cinema. I remember that real well. And originally, for all those years, it was a big one screen And interestingly enough, as a kid, my pre-kindergarten days, they used to do, and I remember this so well because we did it for a long time, they had what they called a Ladies' Day show. And it was every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. And ladies got in free. So this was kind of back when the era when moms didn't work like they do now or as often.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of moms that were at home, and this was something that the cinema offered, and it would be a current movie. And since I was not in school, my mother and grandmother would drag me along. And I think if you were, a little kid, you got in free also. So we used to go to the movies once a week on Wednesdays. I think they did it all summer long. Until they split it into different cinemas, but that went for a long time when I was a kid.
Well, you said you were a musician. Do you remember that they had concerts there also in the summer?
I think they may have done some stuff on the parking lot, if I remember. I don't remember going to anything like that at Northwest Plaza, but I do remember things going on there.
Well, tell us, I happen to remember your mother because I had a Girl Scout troop, and your mother was nice enough to let us come over to her ceramic studio.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Mom was, all the years I was in school, Mom was a room mother. Even my grandmother was also. So they were always very involved in that sort of thing. And they had several hobbies. One was Friday night bingo at St. Mary's Church, which oddly at the time was very illegal. And it was gambling. I mean, it's still gambling. So there were actually Friday nights I can remember, and they went for years. And they'd play in the church basement. And they'd come home early, and you knew that someone had complained, and Bridgeton went and busted up the bingo game. And this would happen, I guess they'd slap somebody's hand. And, so that was hobby number one. Hobby number two was ceramics. And they actually taught a class here in this house in the basement. They had all of everything you need to do ceramics from scratch, and hundreds of what were called molds, where you actually poured figurines from raw materials, and they even had a kiln in the basement. And I remember my grandfather taking that thing to the basement in pieces. It was huge, and a big giant brick oven, and the stuff has to be fired at a very high temperature. And get somebody come over and they do some special wiring to, it's 220 wiring to get this thing hooked up. And so then they started teaching classes, and they did those every Monday and Tuesday. And they were open to anybody in the neighborhood, and I think they charged $0.25 a class. And then you could order stuff, to paint, to, whatever you wanted to do. And you could take it home and work on it, you could work on it here. And the classes were a couple of hours long. And it was always people from the neighborhood that would come in and out, or things with scout groups, things like that. Sure.
Right.
And my mother used to always, and I still get friends that will come up to me and, your mother gave me this in third grade 40 years ago. And it's always amazing to me to look at that stuff, because I was around when she did it, or my grandmother, and they did a lot of it for many years.
Were they both artistic, do you think?
My mom more so than my grandmother. Mom was very artistic. And Grandma was always kind of along for the ride.
What about you and your brother? Were you artistic?
I am actually a very artistic person. Mikey is too, in different degrees. My brother Mike, my younger brother Mike. He's also very artistic. He's a very creative kid. He's a math teacher.
Oh, I see. Where?
And, right now he was actually at one of the St. Louis charter schools.
Okay.
Yeah. And he teaches small classes.
Nice.
Good. It's a really neat thing, and math is his forte, and I'm terrible at math. Absolutely horrible at it.
I see. What about your father? What did he do? Anything extra in Bridgeton?
No, Dad worked many. Dad was one of those dads that worked 2 and 3 jobs.
Where did he work?
He worked for Emerson Electric.
Okay.
He also worked for McDonnell Douglas for a time. So Dad spent most of his life, working and playing golf.
He played golf where?
He played at Berry Hill a lot. It was Bridgeton's golf course. And my friends will tell you, if you could take away this wall, you would see it into my backyard, and the Bridgeton Community Center sits directly behind us in a park about 300 or 400 feet that way.
Uh-huh.
There's a huge field back there, and my dad used to play golf. He used to drive golf balls in the field. And the kind of neat thing about it was that Dad was always a little left of center in a good way. And Dad would hit golf balls, drive golf balls, 10 o'clock at night.
Oh my.
In the dark.
Oh my goodness.
And as a kid, I spent a lot of time hanging out in Gentry Park with my friends. And you would just hear the swing of the golf club, and you would know exactly what was going on.
But I don't think he could find the balls.
Well, no, 10, 15 minutes later, you would just see a flashlight. Dad would be walking around to about where he thought they went, and he'd grab up the 8-10 balls that he hit, and then he'd hit them back the other direction. And this would go on all the time.
Well, my
endless
husband
hours.
joined a men's league after he retired. Did they have leagues like that when your father was playing? Did he join?
They
a
may
league?
have. He played for a couple of teams at a couple of the scrambles, and actually Dad took a part-time job doing maintenance on the golf carts at Berry Hill. And he did that for a number of years.
Okay.
Which was great for him because then he got to play golf for
Right,
free. And, yeah, so that was
yes.
always nice
Did
too.
you or your brother play golf?
I'm terrible at it. I'm awful at it. My kid brother's much better than I am at golf. It's if I don't enjoy it, I just don't seem to have a knack for.
Well, tell us about your music. When did you start enjoying and playing music?
Oh God, the house has been full of music since I was a kid. My mother's house, this house.
And what exactly do you play? What instruments
I play
do you play?
guitar.
No piano?
No piano. I'm a lifelong guitar player. Played trumpet in the high school marching band. Short-lived career as a trumpet player, not my forte at all. But I was fortunate enough to be brought up in a family that had a lot of just music around, and it was very influential to me. It still is today. Was an Elvis fan at a very, very young age. That's where it started for me, and it progressed on its own as I got older.
Did you take lessons from someone?
Yeah, took lessons in a good combination of being self-taught and taking lessons. Took lessons early on, did a lot of self-learning, went back to taking lessons, and I still make my living today in the music business. I build guitar amplifiers, and I play music on the weekends, and it's been a good thing for me.
Did you have any part-time jobs when you were in high school?
Many.
Any in this area?
No, nothing here. I spent a lot of time working as a kid in kitchens. I loved to cook.
Oh, restaurants.
Yeah.
I see.
So and then when you're a musician, those are always easy jobs to get. And when you travel, it's nice to have a job that you can leave and come back to. And restaurant work really lends itself to being able to step away because the turnover is high. And if you're actually good at it, you can always go back to where you came from. So I was very fortunate throughout my younger musical career to have friends that were, family in the restaurant business.
Oh, I see.
And so you always knew you had a job to come back to when you weren't out playing. And I got to see the world at a very young age.
Well, tell us about that. What do you mean you got to see the world? How did you travel?
I traveled, played all
Were
over
you in a
Europe.
band?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah. Straight out of high school.
Really? What was the name of your band?
The band was a little on the heavy side. The band was called Anacrusis.
Anacrusis.
Yeah, it's actually a musical term. It means upbeat.
Oh, okay.
It was, by today's standards, not so heavy. By 80s standards, very heavy.
You mean like heavy metal?
Yes, very,
Okay.
very much so.
All right.
And again, I signed my first record deal at 17.
Really?
Yes.
Wonderful. Now, is that with the band?
Yeah, that was with the band. Yeah,
okay.
it was with the band. We did 4 records for a company called Warner Brothers. Well, it was a subsidiary. It was a smaller label that used a major label distributor. Warner Brothers was the major label distributor. So it was a kind of a happy place for everybody to be. And when you're in that position, and it's different now, we spent a lot of time on the road.
Where did the other guys come from?
Everybody was local.
Were they?
Well, not Bridgeton. Well, no, that's not true. Our original drummer, Mike Owen. His mother still lives in Bridgeton off of Old St. Charles Rock Road. Mike and I went to high school together. So that's where I knew Mike from. The singer Ken lived in St. Anne, went to Rittner.
Okay, that's not real far.
And the bass player John was a Canadian transplant that went to Hazelwood.
Okay.
So we were all kind of in similar circles, similar ages, and at least from St. Louis, yeah. And
How
everybody's
long
still.
did you stay together?
Oh God, we did that for 8 or 10 years. Yeah, did a lot of traveling. Even had a video on MTV, which was a neat thing for me. Not something that everybody can say they did.
Who did you kind of model yourselves after? Can you say that you're one?
Yeah, there were bands, that people would know. Looking at bands like Metallica, they're, obviously probably one of the more popular and still around bands from the heavier genre of stuff. So if you had to give somebody a real general comparison, it would have been stuff like that. And again, this is all pre-internet days, so things were way different than they are today. So it was a great experience for me. I mean, to be 17, 18 years old and just on the road and seeing cities and going to Europe, and it's, an amazing experience for me.
Definitely.
Very, very, very blessed to be able to do the things that I did and to still be playing today. Today I play with a band called Johnny Rocket. We do all the 80s rock and roll.
Oh, that's fun.
So all the, Journey, Motley Crue, Poison, Cheap Trick, and we do what we call full production. So there's stage gear, lighting, costume changes, and we do the whole. And I've been doing that for, oh my God, almost 9 years now. And we play on weekends. We play all over St. Louis. We play the casinos, the local clubs, and it's a wonderful time.
Have you ever talked to Joe Campbell about doing one of the Bridgeton summer concerts?
Joe and I have talked about that on and off. We're pretty loud.
So you think it wouldn't appeal to the audience?
No, I think actually Joe and I have had conversations about that. I think we do very well. The problem again is we don't really have the ability to tame down what it is that we do, and it might be a little bit on the extravagant side for Gentry Park on a Sunday evening.
Well, let's talk about this, because there may be people that are watching this video that are not aware that Bridgeton does offer about 4 to 5 free concerts every summer in Gentry Park, which is literally right almost in your backyard.
Absolutely. And if you want kind of a funny sidebar, we did actually, and I know this to be a fact, we probably did the very first live musical act, the original musical act that ever played at the Bridgeton Community Center. There's a multi-purpose room that's still there today, that has a stage.
Yes.
And when my old band, the one that I traveled with, we were looking for places to play. And back in those days, you would rent out a hall and you would put on a show, and that's what you did. And we rented the Bridgeton Community Center on a Sunday night, and we put on a show.
A free show for anybody that would come in?
That was, and that's kind of where the fun begins. There's a huge set of plate glass windows for anybody who's not there or hasn't seen it. There's a stage, it's a big room, but one side of the room, at the left side as you walk in, is all glass and looks out into Gentry Park.
Yes.
So we were charging, we went and had tickets printed, and so to prevent people from just going and standing outside the window, we covered the whole window with paper. And that in itself became a huge labor to get the windows covered. And then we actually were, Joe Campbell, I think it was Joe who told me this, when we rented the hall, they weren't aware that we were going to be charging admission. And at the time, I don't think you were allowed to sell tickets, because even though the place was closed, it used to close at 8 o'clock on Sunday nights. There was something that prevented us from selling tickets on the property.
Okay.
So my mother had to take the tickets and go up to Fifi and stand on the corner, and as people were pulling in, she had to sell, how many tickets do you need? And she would have to sell them the tickets.
Oh no!
At the corner, and so we had traffic backed up. I mean, there was, I think there was 300 plus people that showed up.
Oh
so
my
traffic was backed up halfway to Brannicky Hardware, which is up the road from the community center, just to get in. And my mom standing on the corner selling tickets and making change and taking money. And so, yeah, it was, that's a wonderful memory for me, actually.
And you know, since I knew your mother, I can just visualize her standing there being your front person. Or
my
whatever.
mother never missed a performance, and that is the truth. Anytime I played in a band that was within a reasonable distance, my mother was there.
Isn't that nice?
It is. That's one thing I can say. My family was always very supportive. Baseball games, soccer games, football games, anything we did, they were involved. When you're a teenager, you're like, no, Mom, please stay
Right.
home.
Yeah. That's right.
So
I
looking
know.
back, it was a wonderful experience.
I know it's a fine line between being there to support your kid and embarrassing your kid.
Well, my mother hung out with all of my friends, so my friends loved my mother. So Mom was always right at home, and yeah, my mother had the house in the neighborhood that all the kids went to. So all through, my childhood years, all of my friends we were always at Mom's house. It was kind of like the one in the center of the neighborhood, and it all started there and branched out from there. So
How did you come by living in your grandparents' house, which is the house we're in right
Yeah,
now?
well,
How did you come by doing that?
Well, I spent a lot of time here. So my grandfather, when he passed away, had left the house to myself and my brother, and I decided that I'd like to live here. So it was a conscious choice. It felt right to me.
What about when you traveled then? Did you have somebody like watch it or just...
Well, yeah, at the time, I wasn't living here.
Oh,
I've been here almost 20 years.
Oh boy. Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've been 20 years this July. Moved in on the 4th of July. I was still living with my parents when I traveled. So there was a time where I didn't travel, and I actually owned a nightclub for a long, long time.
Here in St. Louis?
Here in St. Louis, yeah.
Where
At
was
a place
that?
called T. Billy Buffett's at the corner of Page and 170 in the Overland Plaza. And I did that for 18 years.
And did you play music there?
I played music, yeah, I did, actually. Not initially. Music's kind of what helped me keep my sanity. So there was actually a time where I didn't play at all. I really had just spent so much time as a kid, and I'd put the guitar down, put everything down, and just kind of stopped. And bringing music back into my life was just such a blessing, and it really made me kind of re-examine why I played music to begin with. And when I rediscovered that I just loved playing music, that's when it really opened doors for me that were closed before. So now I was not trying to make a living at it, and it became fun again. And I haven't put it down since. And again, that's been 12, 13 years ago.
Have you thought about giving guitar lessons?
I've thought about it. I've talked to people about it, and maybe someday it's something I'll do. I don't know that I've got the skills as a teacher. My kid brother's an amazing teacher. I sit down and I watch him, and he's very, very good at teaching. So I don't know that I have the ability to translate the information as readily as some teachers would. And again, maybe I would give it a try and find out differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I've considered it, but it's something I think I'd really have to dedicate myself to. And right now I've got so much else going on that I don't know I can really focus on that. But yeah, it's definitely a possibility or a thought. I've given, short-term lessons here and there to people, bring your stuff, let's work on this, or work on that. But nothing on a regimented or, nothing with a curriculum or I don't even know if you could use the word rock and roll and curriculum in the same sentence. I don't know. I don't know how it would work, but I'd be interested in trying sometime.
That's a possibility. I mean, this what kind of comes to my mind, hearing your love and enthusiasm for music, passing it on to, maybe someone younger and just starting, getting involved.
Well, if it comes across that way, it really does my heart good.
Yes.
Because I'm very blessed to do what I do and very passionate about it. So it's been a good thing for me.
Getting back to growing up in Bridgeton, Are there any other events that you can think of offhand besides the parade and you said the fireworks? Thinking back about Bridgeton, you mentioned Brannicky Hardware. Did you go in there very often?
I
Was that
remember
somewhere?
when, God forbid, I remember when Brannicky Hardware burned down.
Okay.
So I can remember the original Brannicky Hardware store and how sad it was when they had a huge fire and destroyed the original building, I guess, which was the original building from, you know, the 1800s. I'm assuming it was that original building. I'm not aware that there was ever another one, but remember how sad it was when that happened and when they rebuilt. And I remember there used to be a little, like long before there was a Lowe's or a Home Depot, there was another Brannicky had a competitor, and there was a hardware store, Telsher Hardware.
Oh, okay. Another family-owned business.
Family-owned business,
Uh-huh.
and the Telshers had their hardware store on the other side of town.
Which was where?
That would have been on Natural Bridge, just Natural Bridge in McKelvey. There's a shopping center at the entrance to what was the Carrollton neighborhood. Well, it wasn't even Schnucks, as a matter of fact, it was JB Supermarket. And it was a strip mall development, and Telsher Hardware sat in the corner. I remember it was a 2-story hardware store, so you went in and they always had it upstairs. So I would go, when my parents would go to the grocery store, and they always went to JB, it was the local grocery store, we would always go over to the hardware store. It was just a little walk across the parking lot, and we'd hang out in the hardware store while they were grocery shopping, and then we'd meet at the car. And so yeah, there was Brannicky Hardware and Telsher, so you always had to tell somebody which one, you know, you gotta go to Telsher to get this, you gotta go to Brannicky to get that, and you know, it was, I guess, more like things used to be.
True. And was there a bowling alley there at the time?
Yeah, the bowling alley has been there, still there, as long as I can remember. I'm trying to remember what else was there. I think the actual strip mall that sits there came later, because Telsher also had a fire, if I'm not mistaken, and I think at that point, I don't think they rebuilt.
I think, didn't they have 2 fires or just one?
So, you know what, there may have been 2. Maybe the first one was a small one. The second one, I think that's when they rebuilt the whole strip mall, or added the strip mall. I think Telsher, the family, decided not to rebuild at that point. And again, that would have been probably mid-'80s, I guess, you know, off the top of my head. And then when JB closed, it became a Schnucks for a little while. And then Schnucks moved to the current location on St. Charles Rock Road, next to the Home Depot.
Yes. And what's there right now where Schnucks used to be?
Let's see, where Schnucks used to be, what do we have now? We have, there's some type of an, you know, and I don't want to get this wrong, there's a church, it's, oh God, I don't know if it's a Hindu church. It's something along those lines. I don't know exactly what it is.
I believe you're right, yes.
So I don't want
Right, give misinformation.
to give misinformation.
Right.
It's right behind where the post office sits.
Right, yes.
And there was a 7-Eleven that sat there for a number of years across the street, which that whole strip mall also burned down.
The strip mall
Across from
burned down?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, Tony's restaurant was.
Yeah, there was Tony's, there was a laundromat, a dry cleaner, and a 7-Eleven that sat across from the mobile station on, then again, there was that intersection, the one I'm talking about is the McKelvey and Natural Bridge. Carrollton was the neighborhood, and Carrollton got bought out for the airport expansion. And Carrollton was a huge neighborhood. So there was a lot of, that corner, or that intersection was very busy in its heyday. There was the mobile station, and then there was another gas station directly across the street. There was an Amoco, I think. The building still sits there. The strip mall directly across from Mobile had a 7-Eleven, Tony's restaurant. There was a 1-hour Martinizing, if I'm not mistaken. It was the dry cleaner. Whatever Martinizing is, I have no idea, but it's something they used to do in the dry cleaner. And then there was another store in there too, I don't recall off the top of my head.
Do you know anything about Tony's restaurant? Because that was quite
That was a place that
iconic
burned
for
down.
Bridgeton.
That burned the whole strip mall down.
What kind of restaurant was it? Do
It
you
was
know?
a diner type. Yeah, it was a breakfast diner. I mean, they were known for breakfast. Well, actually, a very popular place. And I think it was a grease fire that burned the strip mall down, if I'm not mistaken. And they didn't rebuild. because, again, I don't have any real details, but Carrollton had been bought out, so the populace was gone. That intersection just kind of sadly started to die away a piece at a time because there was no traffic. I mean, at one point that was the main entrance to and from Carrollton. So it was probably 2,500, 3,000 people that lived in Carrollton, if not more, maybe more than that. So yeah, it was a very busy intersection in its day, and that's where the post office was. And if you remember, and this is something else I recall, if you went all the way down to the end of Natural Bridge, 270 Natural Bridge, there's now currently there's a big salt depot for the Bridgeton Street Department.
Oh, yes.
That used to be a farm.
Oh.
Yeah, that was Marshall's.
And there was a gentleman who owned named Bill. And to me, it was just Bill the farmer. And I can very clearly remember my dad taking me down many times during the summer, and Bill was always the nicest guy to any of the local people, and he'd set you up on the tractor. And his wife would come out, there was a farmhouse there, and she would come out with fresh picked tomatoes from their field. And I can remember just something so simple as eating tomatoes, and she'd have a salt shaker. And she'd just give, and it was just something they did. And that whole area, there were DePaul Hospital wasn't there, none of that. It was all a big farm field. And I guess he grew corn and tomatoes and other things as well. But that whole area was undeveloped at the time. And that kind of I think DePaul Hospital went in first, and then Strip Mall went in, and different things were added left and right.
Yeah, that was a big farm there.
Yeah, it took up that whole section all the way up to where I guess it's Kohl's now, was Venture for a long time. And I think prior to that it was just a big field. And then McKelvey went up to Pattonville High School, which was there, I guess at the time. But that whole area back there was...
You didn't go to that McKelvey or that Pattonville?
Yeah, that was where the senior high is. So yeah, I did go there.
You went to the new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the old one you're talking about was Holman.
By Northwest Plaza.
Well, that's the middle school that I went to.
But the high school was there too.
Yeah, it was the high school at one point. Yeah, and it was this. And the middle school, I guess, was in a different place, or I'm not sure the exact history. Or maybe Pattonville Heights was the only middle school. But Pattonville, Holman was the high school, or was the location of the high school at one point.
Correct. What do you foresee happening to Northwest Plaza currently? As you did remark early on in our interview that it's being torn down, and you said what do you think is going to happen? Have you heard anything?
I hear we're getting another hardware store.
Okay.
In Menards, I guess,
Menards,
is
yeah.
Large.
That's the
Big
Lowe's
box,
thing,
Lowe's type hardware, of which we have two. We already have a Home Depot and a Lowe's, and Brannicky Hardware. So I don't know that we need a third large hardware store, but
We need something.
They, interestingly enough, Sears was the very first building built, and just for posterity's sake, it was the first building taken down. I don't know if they did that intentionally or not. And for those who don't know, or anybody who's interested, at some point in the mid-'80s, late '80s, Northwest Plaza was turned into an enclosed, more modern shopping mall, which, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people, detracted from what it really was. But it became they enclosed it and kept the basic layout and changed some things, but they turned it into a shopping mall. When they closed the mall after the Carrollton neighborhood moved out, that's when Northwest Plaza closed. And again, I think the population just shifted and things changed. So whatever they're doing there now, they undid whatever they did to enclose it. So before they started tearing anything down, they just kind of reverse engineered all the stuff that they'd added in the 80s. And to my surprise, I could go on this way. Over the last 4 or 5 months, I've actually probably driven up there 15 or 20 different times. Just that you could, until they actually started tearing it down, you could see what it looked like. So it was really just a stepping back into the past, because you could go stand on the parking lot and see what Northwest Plaza used to look like. And it sat there for a number of weeks before they did anything. And one of the really interesting things to me, and I went to photograph this actually, and I had no idea that when they had enclosed the mall, I guess on the outside of the Sears building, and they put up a facade and whatever. When they tore all that down, the original Sears signs had been left behind the facade of the new mall. So when they took it down, you could see the original signage still sitting there, and it was it hadn't seen the light of day in 20 years, 25 years. So it was really nice for me to go up and be able to see those, because that's what I remember as a kid. And those were the things you did. Just like you would park at Sears, or you would park it at, it was hold on, before it was Dillard's, it was
Sticks.
It was Sticks, Bear, and Fuller. And so you parked at Sticks, you parked at JCPenney or Sears, you go to Famous Bar, and those were the four cornerstones kind of Northwest Plaza. And then you had Woolworth was there.
Woolworth's I thought was fun because they had a restaurant.
Hold on, and I can tell you what it was called. Do you remember?
Well, it was just part of the store.
Because as a kid, it was a favorite place for me to eat.
Mm-hmm.
It was called the Steamboat Room. And it's so odd that you mentioned that, because that was one of the places that as a child, I loved to go. There's no reason why. It was really just a cafeteria style restaurant. I mean, just the food, the blue plate special kind of food, that kind of era. So it was a sit-down restaurant, but it was very cafeteria style. But it was called the Steamboat Room, and I guess the decor was, of all things for you to bring up, that's really amazing. You did that, and it's at the top of the escalator.
Huh. I remember eating. I think wasn't it Pasta House that was in that bank?
That was
building?
over the bank. Pasta House
I
over the
went
bank.
there, and I remember because that was when I think my son, who is your brother's age, ordered the first adult meal.
That's nice. Well, they had Walgreens had a restaurant too.
Yeah, that's probably what I was thinking about before.
Well, that was called Wags.
Okay.
And that was a counter service kind of.
And it had a door that went right out to the parking lot.
Well,
back door.
Walgreens was one of the few stores that actually had access from both sides. So when you were on the other side of the mall, Walgreens had two entrances. So one that went into where all the stores were at, and then there was a parking lot entrance also. So everybody would cut through Walgreens. Walgreens was sort that everybody went through.
Uh-huh.
And you
that
could
had
always
to be a security problem.
You would guess. And you could always smell the food. So they had a restaurant. Woolworths had one. Famous Bar had a restaurant.
Yeah.
I think it was on the second floor.
The tea room.
Yeah. Well, there was that. The one where they made the French onion soup. Yeah. And I don't know if that was the tea room or a separate restaurant.
That might have been at Sticks.
Yeah, I think you're right. The tea room was at Sticks, and Famous Bar had, I don't even know if they had a name, but they had a restaurant, and you could smell the French onion soup that everybody always talks about, and you could just smell it through the whole store. And I remember the first arcades, Sears put an arcade in their basement, video arcade, pinball machines, video games, early 80s, and Woolworths had one also. And I remember as a kid, you'd save your lunch money all week, and then you'd walk up to the mall and you'd drop it all in the arcade games. We did that all the time.
That's what they're for?
Yes. And we had, let's see what, speaking of, Kmart had a restaurant as well.
I didn't recall all that.
They had a restaurant and a deli counter.
My favorite was Orange Julius, because I just really like Orange Julius.
Orange Julius was at Northwest Plaza.
Yes.
And I remember exactly where it sat, and it was close to JCPenney, and it was just like you would picture one in the 60s or 70s. It had a door, you walked in, it was very counter service, and they had, French fries, burgers, and you get an Orange Julius. But that, oddly enough, was where you went, for whatever reason, to buy concert tickets.
Oh, really?
They were always available at Orange Julius.
Oh, that's interesting.
That was always the tagline on the commercials for that era. During the 70s, tickets available at Orange Julius. So you always went there, and you see people come in all the time to buy concert tickets. Target, which is sitting where it always has sat on St. Charles Rock Road, Overland Dairy, used to be the grocery store that was connected to Target, and they shared a common wall, and there was like a big garage door, and you could go between the two stores. Kmart, the original Kmart for this area, is now a weekends only.
Oh,
That's where Kmart
yes.
used to sit.
Across from Northwest Plaza.
Yes, and actually it was across from that building. There's a building that's still there that's a furniture store also.
Yes.
There's weekends only, and then there's the one across the street. I forget. It's,
Yes.
Mattress place.
yeah, whatever. That used to be Children's Palace,
Yes.
which was a huge toy store that was just amazing for us as kids. And they were like the size of a Lowe's, but they were toy stores. And that was the Children's Palace, and across the street was Kmart, and the original Shop and Save moved in next door to Kmart. So Kmart and Shop and Save sat there, and then Target and Overland Dairy sat down the Rock Road, and there was a cafe in the back of Kmart. So when you walked in the front of the store, they actually had a deli counter where you could get sandwiches at Kmart, and the icy machine. I remember as a kid, you just always want to go get one, and you could go sit down and have lunch. And
You mentioned Shop and Save.
mm-hmm.
Do you remember what was where the new Shop and Save?
I do. I spent a lot of time there as a kid too, as the Airway Drive-In.
Mm-hmm. And across the street at the Four Screen.
Yes, absolutely. Oh God, yes.
Yeah, it's really cool the way they kept that Art Deco sign.
I do think so too. I thought it was a really neat touch for them to do that. Spent a lot of time at that drive-in as a kid. It was always amazing to go sit there and watch a movie, and it's something you've never experienced, and probably most people never will get to experience this, but it's a really neat thing to sit there and watch a movie in a thunderstorm.
And a thunderstorm.
Oh, which we did many times. Yeah, you'd be there. Well, you're at the drive-in, and it starts to rain, and a big storm blows through. Well, you just load everything up. You'd get in the car, roll up the windows. The speaker would be inside the car with you, so you just rolled the windows so you didn't get wet, and the movie still played. So I mean, nobody laughed.
You have to wipe the windows once again.
Yeah, you put the wipers on, but it was a really neat experience to sit in. It's lightning, thunder all over the place, but your wife, did that many times.
Was there more than one movie when you went to the drive-in?
There was always two. Always two. It would start at dusk, and we'd always get there just a little ahead of time so you could go to the playground or concession stand or whatever. And it was a simpler time. I mean, your parents would just turn you loose.
Yeah.
You get to the drive-in, you'd be back at the car 10 minutes before the movie starts, and they'd always give an announcement. Showtime's coming up, and you better get your ass back to the car. There's going to be a problem. Absolutely, I remember that. So, yeah. I mean, a lot of things have changed over the years.
When you were at Carrollton School, did they have school picnics at the end of the year?
They did every year. There was always a school
What did
picnic.
they do for a school picnic?
It was always just thrown on the playground. Families would come, parents would come, there'd be games, that sort of thing. We always did one. It was always during the school year, but it was always getting towards the end of the year. There was always some type of school's going to be out, event, celebration, different themes. That was always fun.
Mm-hmm.
Always fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Carrollton, even the school's gone now, that's gone, all of those things are gone.
Were you affiliated with any church? I'm not trying to be really personal.
No, I was born and raised, no, absolutely, St. Mary's. And I think I mentioned that earlier. It's where my mom and grandma played bingo in the basement, yeah.
Which is not there anymore either.
St. Mary's Church was torn down in the airport expansion, sadly.
Yes.
And that was replaced by St. Lawrence.
Yeah, well, St. Lawrence was always there.
But it wasn't as fully occupied as it was.
No, and it's now, they expanded that to accommodate for everybody. There was St. Blaise, St. Lawrence, St. Mary's. Those were not only the churches, but those were also the private Catholic grade schools as well. So they served like a dual purpose. Most of my friends from this area went to St. Mary's. The Catholic school kids went there, and then there was the group that went to St. Lawrence, and there was the St. Blaise kids. So there were always the Catholic kids and the public school kids, and we usually convene in high schools. Most of them ended up in public high school, or a lot of them did.
Looking back on your Pattonville high school days, was it are they good memories?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would go back to high school in a second. And I know everybody says that, but it would be Absolutely, I had wonderful times in high school.
Do you keep up with anybody that went to
I am
Pattonville?
fortunate enough to, and people hear me talk about this from time to time, but I've got a number of people in Kevin's 40-year club, and those are people that I've known for 40 plus years that are still in my life that I'm still in touch with on a regular basis. People still live in the area.
And was this before, the program you can do on the internet? What is
Way
it?
before Facebook.
Ancestry.com and all that?
Well, there's that and Facebook, but this predates all of it. I mean, these are people that I've known literally since I was in kindergarten and have been in touch with high school friends all the way through high school, beyond high school, all the way up to, I just had dinner with one of them 2 days ago. There's a number of people in the 40-year club, which is nice, and it's something that's it seems kind of unique. I mean, I know that there are people that do keep in touch, and that's these are people that have been in my life regularly for the entire time. So I'm very blessed and fortunate to have those kinds of friendships and relationships, and to watch them raise their families and see their kids, and it makes parties fun when you get to tell stories about dad to their own kids, and it's been a neat experience, and you don't see it too often. My kid brother Mike has got a similar set of circumstances. He still talks to a lot of his high school and kindergarten friends. I mean, he's 8 years younger than me, but he's got his own club he's working on. So
that's wonderful.
It's a neat thing.
Well, we really thank you for letting us come over today and reminisce
Fantastic.
and hear your experiences with Bridgeton, and it was really nice. And I hope you stay in Bridgeton until your golden years.
Thank you very much.